It's a beautiful day here in Pacifica. Today I'm going to play around with saturated color. Here's the scene I'm working with. As usual, I'll be using the scene for inspiration, but I will be making changes to some of the shapes for compositional purposes, and as mentioned, I will be pushing the color. I think I'll probably try to stay true to the colors I'm seeing, except maybe make them more saturated. I'll be painting over an old 12 by 16 inch painting, and I'll be using my usual limited palette of colors. However, I did squeeze out some cobalt teal, some quinacridone magenta, and also some cadmium orange. Starting with a mixture of ultramarine blue and a bit of burnt sienna. Just gonna map out the big shapes here. This has been a difficult morning so far. I got out here about an hour ago and realized that I had no SD card in my camera. No SD card, no video, so I drove around Pacifica trying to find an SD card. It took me about an hour. I did not want to go all the way back home. Now I'm back up and running. From now on, I plan to keep an extra SD card in my glove box. For the sky, I'm starting with a mixture of ultramarine blue and titanium white. I am going to try to limit my colors to the primary colors, blue, yellow, and red, and then also secondary colors, green, purple, and orange. So no grays or grayed down colors. I'm going to try to go with saturated colors. And I've tried experimenting with color in the past, but I never had a clear mission in mind, and so oftentimes I would sort of fall back into my old habits. So I think that setting some parameters or having a mission statement can help to keep me on track. All right, so I've got some pure titanium white here, establishing the whitewater shapes, and some whitewater here. I'm using a number 8 natural bristle flat. I've got a mixture here of phthalo blue and a bit of cadmium yellow lemon. Normally when I block in a painting, I thin the paint with medium so that I can cover the panel quickly. But in this case, I am going in with thick paint already. I am still just approximating colors, but I am trying to boost the saturation. All right, I've got a mixture of cadmium orange and some cadmium yellow medium and some titanium white. For the shadow shapes on the rocks, I'm starting with dioxazine purple and a little bit of titanium white. By adding titanium white, it raises the value and the purple becomes more obvious or more visible. Here I've got a mixture of cadmium red and dioxazine purple. Adding some color to the rocks. I'm going to need to lighten the value of this red here because it appears to be in shadow. That's all right. I'm just trying to get the shapes established first. There's some greenery on the cliffs here. And there's a bit up here as well. There's some people out here weeding, doing community service. And I can see that they're watching me. And it'll be interesting if any come over to take a look. I have a feeling the average person might be kind of horrified. I think red is going to be the most difficult color to introduce into the painting without having it look extreme. But in a way, extreme is kind of what I'm looking for. I want this painting to look different from my normal paintings. I think it's good to experiment. Sometimes when we've been painting for a long time, we can get into habits or routines and then just stay in those comfortable places. I think it can be good for the creative process to shake things up. And also, if you approach it with the right frame of mind, it's really fun. That's crazy. All right, adding titanium white to my dioxazine purple. I want to lighten up these shadows so that the purple is more visible. Also, I'm keeping in mind that when I get this painting indoors, it's going to be darker. I realize I'll also have to lighten up the reds and greens here because they're actually in light. And so obviously they need to be lighter in value than the shadow shapes. Adding some purple here as well. I've been looking at a lot of Fauves paintings lately, and that would be Henri Matisse and André Derain. Forgive me if I pronounce that wrong, but they were French painters who experimented with color in the early 1900s, and I really like the vitality of their paintings, and so I've been inspired to experiment with color myself, and here I am. Next, I'm going to mix a color for the sand, starting with a mixture of titanium white, cadmium yellow medium, and cadmium orange. Quite a bit different from reality. And yet, as I've said before, as a painter, what I'm trying to do is recreate the lived experience of standing in front of a scene. We change the shape of things to make for a better composition, and we can also use color to help communicate that lived experience. I want to lighten up the water here with some cobalt teal and cadmium yellow lemon. Lighten it up in here too. We've got some ultramarine blue and titanium white for the shallow water, where you can see rocks that are sort of submerged, and adding some of that color around the base of some of these rocks as well. Maybe up here. I think having the mission statement really helped. I'm doing better this time at keeping my colors saturated, and as I mentioned, just using primary and secondary colors. So in other words, you could look at this painting and say, oh, that's purple, that's orange, that's red, that's green. All right, I've mixed up a light value purple here using quinacridone magenta and ultramarine blue and titanium white. And this purple is definitely different than a purple I would get if I used dioxazine purple and titanium white. This is more of a lavender color, maybe? Lightening up the value of this orange color here on the cliffs so that hopefully the purple reads as shadow. Although I'm not that concerned if it doesn't. Again, I'm just playing with color, so the color is the most important thing here, and if it reads properly as a shadow, then that's fine. But if it's just an interesting arrangement of colorful shapes, that's okay too. All right, so here's what I finished up with. This painting took just over an hour to complete. It was finished on site. When I first got this painting home, I was not sure how I felt about it. One thing I did notice right away is how much more vitality is in this painting compared to paintings where I use my normal approach to color. I realized while mixing colors today how much I actually gray down my colors, which makes sense if you're trying to reproduce what you're seeing. Most of the colors we see in nature are pretty gray, actually. There's very little saturated color in nature, in a landscape or a seascape. But as I mentioned, what I'm trying to do is recreate the lived experience. In other words, when standing in front of a scene, it seems an impossible task to capture the beauty and vitality of what we're looking at. That's one of the reasons I plein air paint, is because it's so inspiring, but it's also humbling. The idea of trying to capture a bit of what we're looking at or what we're experiencing is sort of an overwhelming task. And I feel like color is something that can help communicate that feeling, even if it's exaggerated or not completely accurate. It could even be using different colors to convey a certain sort of feeling. There's something really exciting about painting in this way. It's also really challenging. When the colors are more saturated, the relationships become more critical. So I think experimenting with more saturated color is an opportunity to learn about color, so I highly recommend it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. It's the Patreon support that helps keep me making these videos, and it's much appreciated. I've also put a PayPal tip jar down below if that's more your thing, so check it out. Other than that, stay creative. I'll see you guys in the next video.